Captain, we have them. We've established Transporter Lock, the Star Trek Discovery podcast. Join Ken and Sabriel each week as they explore strange new episodes, seek out new plots and new characters, and boldly go where no podcast has gone before.
Hello and welcome to Transporter Lock episode number 72 for Sunday, January 3rd, 2021. We made it through this dumpster fire along with my co-host.
Yippee-ki-yay!
It was one of those holiday seasons for sure.
2020. Wow. I'm glad we had Star Trek to get through there a little bit, which was nice.
We had a lot. We had Picard, we had Lower Decks, we had Discovery, probably more Star Trek than we've ever seen in a year.
Yeah, and on a down note, I was also looking, just before you guys came online to talk today, I was looking at this list of all the Star Trek people we've lost this year. Like Kalis, and a few background actors, and a number of them, but I won't go through the whole list. But on that happy note, did we introduce ourselves?
I introduced myself.
Oh man, I just didn't remember hearing your name. Hi, I'm Captain Sabriel Maston. And we are having a guest today.
We do have a guest. Welcome aboard, Captain of Engineering, Neil Beardsley.
Oh, thank you. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Neil. So we always ask our guests, who are you? What's your favorite Star Trek? But first, we have to get this out of the way. Captain of Engineering?
Yes, it's a rarity. I'm only aware of one person to have attained this rank, the same as me, who is Montgomery Scott, of course. So I'm in a rare group of fantastic people. So,
well, you're from those old scientists, the TOS era. So exceptions can be made.
Yes,
I think really you just want to outrank me, the chief of engineering.
Well, you're stuck on one ship probably, and I get to travel among many. So I wouldn't say I'm better than you, just different than you.
Well, that's a relief, because I was going to put in for a transfer, but if I just have to wait it out until you leave, then I can do that.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay. So, Neil, tell us a little bit about yourself. What brings you to the show today?
So, as you mentioned, I'm Neil Beardsley, commonly known online as N.A. Beards. I started watching Discovery maybe 8 months ago. And have caught up, and I'm now on the full release schedule, and have been watching Star Trek off and on since 1989.
Wow.
And have always enjoyed it. Started with The Next Generation. I hope my timing's right on that. Seems about right. And yeah, I actually started watching Discovery when it not when it first came out, but maybe a year ago, and I watched the first couple of episodes, and it, for whatever reason, didn't click with me at the time. But then a couple of other friends had said they were sticking through it and enjoying it, so I started watching it all over again a few months after that.
Awesome. Do you have and you've been watching during the pandemics a lot of other Star Trek too? Yes.
So I just finished Voyager. I watched the entire series over the exact same timeline that I was watching Discovery. And it was kind of good to watch the last season again, because I feel like I forgot so much of it. And I would have to say, for me in Voyager, the most powerful episode is actually the episode where Neelix left, which I believe is the third or fourth to last of the series.
Yeah.
And that was really, okay, I'm a big baby and I cried. But it was just so touching and dramatic, and then watching the finale after that, I was actually a little let down, because the finale was just so, I felt like they got back to the Alpha Quadrant and the episode ends, and you're like, well, wait, I feel like there's so much unresolved stuff here.
Yeah.
So, but overall, I really do enjoy Voyager. I think it's a great series.
Would you say it's your favorite Star Trek series?
I guess not. I guess for me to judge something to be my favorite would be something that if I came across it already playing somewhere, I will gladly watch it. And I guess the next generation of for Star Trek is the one that does that for me. There could be any episode on, and I will gladly watch it. So I guess that's my favorite. Maybe it's partly nostalgia there, but
Well, Next Generation is also a very easy series to jump into. Like if you see DS9 coming on, first you have to figure out, okay, what season is this? Who's alive? Who's dead? Who's a changeling? Who's not? And then you can enjoy the episode. But TNG, you're just like, you know the players, and that's all you need.
right. Similar to the classic, each episode was almost very standalone. Certainly there was an overarching storyline, but
Right.
definitely more standalone than some of the other series.
Now, for Discovery, there was a brief pause or delay between when Captain Sabriel and I watched the episode and when you did, because they're delivered a little bit later where you are in Costa Rica.
Yes, that's correct. So we received them via international. I'm trying to think of something cool to say, but I don't have anything.
Coconut.
yes, the Coconut Wire delivers it. And we actually get it here on Netflix, which is kind of interesting because everything Netflix shows here that is exclusive to some other station in the U.S. is promoted here as a Netflix original series, and I just think it's funny. So here, Star Trek Discovery is a Netflix original series.
That's weird.
Yes, it's very strange.
That's really false advertising.
That happens with shows that are outside the U.S. that are broadcast here as well.
Yes.
Lilyhammer comes to mind right away. It's one of the first Netflix originals, quote unquote, I started watching years ago. Netflix original, even though it was made by a Norwegian TV show and it just bought by Netflix.
Yes.
And it's available in other countries via means other than Netflix?
At least in Norway, it was on TV.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
And what is it that brings you to Costa Rica?
So, like you can, in real life, I'm a digital nomad. So my wife and I are full-time travelers, and we just happened to be here when the pandemic hit. And we have been very fortunate that the government of Costa Rica has consistently extended our tourist visas with no effort on our part whatsoever. So we've stayed here because the case count has been significantly lower than the United States as well as many other places. So we just enjoy being here and out in the country and fresh air.
I mean, it's a beautiful place to be, quote unquote, stranded, and
Yes.
It is certainly a lot safer. But I imagine you would prefer to be there by choice, as opposed to you don't have really the option to go anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been a challenge. My wife especially is a big planner. So we had lots of grand plans for the last year and have had to make and break them a couple of times before she finally gave up. So it's really been probably the last 6 months of like, okay, we just can't plan anything. But we're fortunate that Costa Rica, although basically the size of South Carolina, is quite diverse in its topology. Ooh, using big words. So I'm currently in the mountains. We actually moved down to the coast for a few months. So we were at the beach, and it was just a completely different experience. And actually, since we've been here, we bought a car for the first time in 7 years. I think it's been 7 years since we had a car.
Oh, wow.
So we bought a little, 4x4 1988 Samurai Suzuki, and have been able to get everywhere we want to go in the country, which is kind of nice. It is definitely a 4x4 accessible country. There are definitely some places you need that to go exploring. So we've been able to kind of branch out here, even though in many respects we're stuck here. So that's been able to keep our sanity.
And have you named this shuttlecraft of yours?
Cheeky.
The USS Cheeky.
Yes.
How fitting.
Named after a delicious sandwich cookie that they sell here. So, of course.
I can see the connection.
You didn't buy me one of those when I was down there. What the heck, man?
No, we just discovered it this trip, my friend.
Oh, I see. And the reason I was visiting you and the reason you call me your friend is because you and I go back 22 years to undergraduate.
Yes. That's a long time.
It is. Oh my gosh. I can't believe we haven't killed each other. Someday, my friend. Someday.
Your honor depends on it.
It's like that. I think there was a movie about this group of friends who were playing tag for like 20 years.
Oh, wow, that sounds familiar.
And like one of them would show up at the other person's wedding and just interrupt and run up and smack him and say, "You're it."
Wow.
So that's going to be you and me, Neil. Just look behind every bush. You don't know when I'm going to jump out. But anyway, we are here today to talk about Star Trek Transporter Lock, Season 3, Episode 12, originally called The Good of the People, now renamed There Is a Tide. The last 3 episodes of the season have been renamed. We discussed this a little bit last week, and they're continuing that trend. I'll give a very brief TLDR, which is that Osira, in command of the Discovery, leaps both of her ships back to Federation headquarters, and she sneaks the Discovery into the shield bubble that they have, not to attack the Federation headquarters, but rather to engage in parley with Admiral Vance about the Emerald Chain and the Federation uniting to form one mega Federation. In fact, there is no war between the two in this episode. Meanwhile, Discovery is infiltrated by Book and Michael, who fly their ship through some sort of a quantum slipstream back to Federation headquarters. They crash land into the shuttle bay of the Discovery. Burnham goes full diehard, crawling through air ducts without shoes in order to take out the bad guys. She ships Paul Stamets, into Federation headquarters off the Discovery so that the bad guys don't have what they need to engage the spore drive. And also there is a Emerald Chain scientist who feels conflicted about what he's trying to do. Did I miss anything?
You got the TLDR. That's good.
Yeah, that's a good TLDR.
Yeah. All right. So we have a lot going on here. We have Michael and Book. We have Tilly and her crew who are also trying to take back the ship. We have Osira and Admiral Vance doing a lot of talky talk. Where do we want to begin reviewing this episode?
My first thought is Grudge has a safe room.
Oh, thank goodness. Priorities here.
Last week I was upset that Grudge was in danger. This week we find out she has a safe room.
So is it just like a cat room like many people have?
Well, there's like force fields and barricades, like all this stuff. They had a little picture of it going on.
Oh. So when you talk about barricades, you mean like that little fence that you swing open and close?
Yep. No.
Or the gate just big enough for a cat, but not for a dog, unless maybe it's a pug. Oh, man.
But I started to notice, I'm glad they already addressed this. I'm guessing they heard us talking about it and went back and did some edits real quick.
That's right.
Pretty sure that's what happened.
Yeah. Kind of like in Snakes on a Plane when they went back and added more swear words.
Fascinating.
Yeah, very illogical. So
I think, Sabriel, that scene reminds me that is when Michael tells Book for the first time that she loves her consciously, or loves him consciously. Apparently she has said it in her sleep prior to this. But I thought that was a landmark or a milestone of the series at this point.
Yeah, he's going to live now.
Yeah.
Now we know he's going to live.
He's sticking around.
Yeah, I loved that scene for a couple of reasons. One, well, both reasons Neil just pointed out, which is that she's never really said this. I don't remember if she said it to Ash Tyler, but we know from season 1, Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, that she's never been in love prior to that episode. And the only lover she's had since then, besides Book, tried to kill her. So that's, not a great track record. So for her to have a guy that she can unabashedly say this to without reservation is awesome. She didn't hesitate or make a big deal out of it. In fact, it was delivered so without reservation that it felt like she had said it before. And that was, I thought, a great delivery, because it doesn't need to be momentous. It just needs to be, this is a fact. This is how I feel.
I was okay with it. I mean, it fits. They've been doing through a bunch of stuff, but me and hetero, so well, I'm glad they had their moment.
Yeah. And also, I loved what, as Neil said, that Book said, "Oh, you said it in your sleep." That's such a clever variation on Han Solo's "I know."
That's a good point. I like that.
Yeah. So you think this means that Book has to live? Because I feel like somebody has to die.
I think they're not gonna live this time. Sometimes everybody lives.
How boring. How disappointing. What a letdown.
The doctor will not like to hear that.
Well, actually, that's something else I didn't mention in the TLDR, is what we didn't see in this episode, which was Saru, Culber, and Adira all back on the dilithium planet with Sokal.
Right.
Yeah, they're all setting up for part 2, I'm guessing. We had more important things to figure out here.
I'm actually curious if this is going to be a pause of the storyline that we've been following with Michael and going back to the Federation, if we'll either return to the dilithium planet, and so we'll have an entire episode of what's happening there, or might we even do something crazy like go back to what happened to Mirror Universe lady whose name escapes me at this minute.
Giorgio?
Yes.
Oh,
Giorgio.
she is done. She is done. She's got her own show going on.
Oh.
And so she is done on Discovery.
Yeah, the reason they sent her into the past is because she's contracted to have her own Section 31 spin-off series.
Oh, how depressing. Okay. I mean...
Well, at the end of season 2, they left Ash Tyler running it, and we don't want that.
No more of him. Please make sure, when she goes back, he's gone.
Can you imagine Ash Tyler's boss saying, dude, you're doing such a terrible job. We hired somebody from the future to replace you. Whoa.
We have to go to a different dimension to get this candidate.
Yeah. You are the worst Section 31 leader we have ever had. We are all dumber for what you've done here. And I award you no points.
And may God have mercy on your soul. Yes.
I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but I think I'm just going to get to it right away. Paul Stamets in this episode, and the hell that he had to go through, both with Aurelio and with Michael.
Yeah.
When he's trying to humanize himself, when he's captured, Aurelio here's talking to him. Aurelio keeps talking about the spore drive, and his thing. I have to talk about his family, and here Paul's is trying to humanize himself. I've got a family too, and he even calls Adira his kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I wrote my notes. Oh.
It took me a second to realize he meant Adira, because I didn't realize, we've been talking about them as space dads, but I didn't realize the connection was that tight after less than a season.
Off air and whatever like that. They have this real connection. They've been showing us this connection growing.
Yeah.
But then Michael does not want to do what she's going to do. Yeah. And because she had to knock him out because he was like, all right, we're going to go jump and save my family. His he wrote down his thing my whole life is in that nebula, talking about Hugh and Adira, and he was just about to ready to jump Discovery, not caring who's on board or what's going on, just to go rescue them. And she had to knock him out and put him in a tube of safety, launching him into space where he'll be safe from Osira towards the Federation. And the screaming and yelling. Oh my God. I get really emotional just thinking about it. It was so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he also really hit Burnham below the belt with some of the things he said.
We came to the future for you. Hugh came to the future for you. So you wouldn't have to be alone.
Yeah, you shouldn't have come to the future only to hold it against them later.
I don't think that was the reason. He was just an outbreak of emotion.
Yeah. Do you think it was the right decision for Michael to stop him from doing that, from jumping? Based on what we've now seen the rest of the episode play out, I in retrospect, yes. I was like, gosh, what if they had just jumped because Osira was not on board then? Kind of things were already in motion for Tilly and her team to escape captivity.
I don't know that she knew Osira was away.
Right. That's very true.
She might have. I just could. I don't know. She knew it for sure. But I think it was the right thing.
Yeah, regardless of who was on board, the ship was still under enemy control. And one of Booker's playing cards was, I know how to get to the dilithium planet. I know where it is. And if Stamets had just jumped them right there, there's no guarantee that they would have had access to the transporters to bring Culber, Saru, and Adira back. And even if they could, the ship would still be under enemy control, so now they would just have 3 more prisoners, including a captain. And now the Emerald Chain would know where the dilithium planet is.
True.
So at first, I was like, yes, let's jump back. Let's rescue those people immediately. But then I was like, wait a minute. Will jumping lead to them being rescued? And I think the answer is no.
Good call.
Although I will say that when Stamets was referring to his partner as Hugh, I'm so used to hearing him called Culber, I started thinking, wait, are the Borg here too?
Oh, what?
Like
Hugh?
Hugh.
Oh, Hugh.
Because we don't know what have happened to the Borg in the last 930 years.
Oh, we don't. But that did not occur to me.
Well, there can be only one Hugh. That's
right. That's right. Canonically.
And what if they are the same? No, never mind.
Yeah.
Because we had Hugh on Star Trek Picard. But anyway, moving on.
Had.
Aw, spoiler.
Oh, I haven't watched any of Picard. I can't get that here. At least I haven't found it here.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, we didn't say where Hugh comes back.
Oh, no, it's okay.
You don't have season 2 of Short Treks either, right?
That's correct. So I actually did a little bit of research on that. So Netflix bought the rights to the first Short Treks, but then passed on the second season.
Really?
So I can't see that. I have no access to the Short Treks from after season 2. So
Weird.
yeah, I did watch the first ones, which were great. But yeah, Ken was, Ken, you recommended I watch those ones specifically, and I was kind of like, yeah, that'd be great, but I haven't been able to find them. As said to you, I would look for them, and if I would watch them if I could find them legally, and I have been unable to do so. So that is very sad for me.
Well, the good news is that 3 of the 4 first season Short Treks tied directly into Discovery, including Calypso, which we don't know how it ties in yet.
Mm-hmm.
Season 2 of Short Treks, in my opinion, is more filler, and it's no less fun and entertaining, but it is less critical viewing.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I would say the first Short Treks, although directly tied in, were certainly not necessary to understand the storyline, because I obviously didn't see them until last week, so halfway through season 3. They were still interesting to watch, but certainly not necessary to keep up with the storyline.
Sure. So the reason that Burnham was able to save Paul, well, actually, let's talk a little bit more about Paul in the first place. I was interested in the technology that was used to inhibit his neurons. It seems like he was still somehow self-aware and conscious, even if he couldn't control himself, because when he came out of that thing, he was not surprised that he was tied up. He had already noticed Aurelio's marks behind his ear, which there's no way he could have seen that from where he was standing at that moment. So he must have been observing these things while he was in that trance.
Yeah, and it reminded me of, he was like, I'm drawing the blank on why he was in a very similar state before, when his husband was murdered by that guy, dude. I'm terrible with names. Even though I know who they are.
He was in that state in season 1.
Because he had just made 50 jumps in a row to defeat the Ship of the Dead.
That's right.
Yeah, sort of a fugue state.
Yeah. And he looked like, I don't know, identical to that. I don't know if you felt that way, but the same, eyes went mostly white, and kind of had that good description, fugue state feeling about him. So I was just curious if this meant, how did they design this device to put him back into that state, or has that state become known as some level of state, or was it just his reaction to that device putting him back into that state because that's how he is when he's unable to control himself?
I think it's portrayed similarly on screen, but I think they are different effects, because the first time he was somehow still connected to the mycelial network, which is actually how they were able to bring Culber back.
Right.
Whereas this time, as soon as they put that headset on, he entered that state even before he put his hands into the GUI interface.
Right.
So I don't think they're the same thing. It's just more broadly indicating that he doesn't really have control of himself. That's my take.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this scientist, Aurelios,
Aurelios. Aurelio. No, you had it right.
Okay. Do any of you, before I get too didactic, do any of you recognize the actor?
I wouldn't have until I saw everyone talking about it online. Like, I have no idea. I'm bad with actors, though.
I know him as the brother from Jericho.
Oh, I've never seen Jericho. Is that a good show?
Apparently not, because it was canceled. I enjoyed it. It was a post-apocalyptic drama that was set in Jericho, I want to say Kansas?
Somewhere in the Midwest.
Yeah, so, it was on for, I believe, 2.5 seasons or maybe a season and a half. I'm not sure. But they canceled it after season 1, and then there was a fan outcry, and so I think they built like half a season. That was that. But he's the older brother in that series. That's where I recognized him from, but I don't know him from anywhere else.
Okay. So the actor's name is Kenneth Mitchell, and I had just watched like a 20-minute interview with him before this episode. In season 1, he played Cole, the Klingon who took over after Takuvma was killed. So Cole is the one who was piloting the Ship of the Dead. In the second season, I believe he played Cole's father in one episode. And then he also played Ash Tyler's son, the Klingon in charge of the time crystals, the Guardian, on the planet that Pike went to.
Wow.
And then he also did some voices on Star Trek Lower Decks. In the time since he portrayed Cole in season 1 of Discovery, he was diagnosed with ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. So that's one of the reasons why the character is in some sort of a conveyance, because that is partly representing the actor as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of story behind that. Kind of like, no, never mind.
They were able to bring him back for this. Like apparently a lot of people he was worried like he wouldn't have been able to be on Star Trek or act like this anymore. And they were like, oh, we got you.
Yeah. Even though he played relatively minor parts, like he wasn't a main cast member, from the interview that I saw, he really developed some deep relationships with the rest of the cast, and they've been very supportive of him, which is, when you're going through something like that, really important. Yeah. So, however, this character, not the actor, but the character, I'm impressed that he got as far in his career and in his relationship with Osira, who calls him old friend, as he has, without ever witnessing what Osira is capable of.
Yeah.
Agreed.
She's kept him basically from that all his life, and now he has to see it right up front.
Yeah, and she didn't even insist that he leave the bridge. She's like, "Hey, if you want to see that, that's fine." And she didn't really consider that. Hey, there might be consequences to removing the wool from his eyes.
We'll find out next week. But yeah, his reactions in the background. You can, if you just watch him. I mean, they kind of show him a little bit here and there, but if you just watch him, like, you can see the pain, like, oh God, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that is this maybe like his first journey out onto a mission of some kind where before he was maybe kept somewhere to be isolated from any of these experiences?
Basically, is this his first away mission?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think so, based on some of her wording. Like, she mentioned something like, I try to keep you safe. Mm-hmm. I make sure everything's safe first before bringing you or doing stuff like this. And so I think it was not the first time. It's just the first time that he's been close where action is still going on.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like they're pulling a bit of an Arium here where they're introducing a character to us right when it becomes important for us to know that character.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like there are other examples in Star Trek and Star Wars where a character is turncoat, like Ensign Ro, for example, in Next Generation. When she ultimately betrays us, then that is really profound because we've known her for several seasons. Whereas this scientist, I feel like he's being introduced just in time to betray Osira. And that, it's not quite a Deus Ex Machina, but I feel like it is very convenient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, no argument there, honestly.
I agree with what you're saying, Ken, that it seems like an oddly convenient time to introduce this character who has already been set up to revolt against Osira. And that he is the, smartest, most fantastic scientist in 3 quadrants. So what will he then do for us Federation folk, what will he then do for us once he comes to the light side, if that is in fact how the story plays out? It'll be interesting.
Right. I mean, his primary connection in this episode was to Paul Stamets, who is no longer on board. So I don't think they're going to have much interaction, the two of them, next episode. And it's not like he can go to Osira and say, no, I will not experiment on Paul Stamets. And she's going to be like, that's because you don't have him.
Right.
He's going to be someone who maybe she will listen to. I mean, he saw her murder Rin right there on the bridge.
Yeah.
That reminded me of the TNG episode, I think it was called The Most Toys, where that collector captures Data, and at the end, he hesitates to kill his assistant, and then in the end, he just kind of shrugs and does it. And I feel like he pulled that off better than Osira did, because I never doubted that Osira was going to kill Rin. Whereas in the TNG episode, I was like, that fake out really had me thinking he was going to let her go. But no, Osira, Rin never had a chance.
I mean, if it was earlier in the episode, she might have done it. But here, she was already like, nope, shit. She was like, nope, shoot. Things have gone poorly, not according to plan. We could just kill these people.
And we never actually did see the rest of the Discovery crew on that shuttlecraft arrive at Federation headquarters.
One shuttlecraft for an entire crew of like 100 people.
Yeah, like in season 2, they needed those space bridges between Discovery and Enterprise to get everybody off, and now it's just one shuttle.
Yeah, I know it's a dramatically small crew compared to what was because they left at the same time. You know, like end of season 2, everyone's like, whoever wants to stay. You know, it's a much smaller crew, but I mean, I was like, one shuttlecraft still, really?
Yeah.
Also, do they even have a functioning shuttle bay? Because the one that Book crashed into was all aflame.
Maybe that was part of no. Yeah, I'm guessing they have more than one shuttle bay. This is probably just the primary one. I mean, even Enterprise and all the other ships had more shuttle bays.
That's true.
But it was kind of funny. Everyone online was like, now we see the point why Discovery was designed with an open shuttle bay so someone can crash into it.
Yeah, it's the timing on that was impeccable. I was wondering how they were able to get in, but they said they had to drop the shields in order to enter Federation HQ, and I guess Book and Burnham knew that. I was like, dang, that is some good flying.
Has there ever been a starship with an open bay? Because I feel like they've always had some sort of, for lack of a better word, garage door. So
it has been like, no, yeah, it's always been that. Even like TNG, they would have that little warning as the garage doors opened and the force field's there.
Right.
And I guess closest is DS9 when these runabouts would be set off into space. But even then, no, not open door.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be a structural integrity issue, especially when they go to warp.
I mean, science fiction. Right now that the nacelles are pulled away from the ship, I can allow for an open door.
Detachable nacelles, yay.
It seems like an odd advancement in science right there, doesn't it?
Right?
The open shuttle bay or the detached nacelles?
The detached nacelles. Like, what is the benefit of that? Like, oh, great. Everything's so much better now that those are detached.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe, I mean, they'll figure out some spacey-wacy chat one day.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, Voyager's nacelles folded up and down, so why not just detach them?
But that was their spacey-wacy thing, was this is what makes it so we can travel, not damage the warp or subspace and all that stuff.
Right, which is not something Discovery knew about in the era it was invented.
Yeah.
So maybe they're like, oh, we need to retrofit you so that you're not destroying subspace. So it's so much easier to fold nacelles when they're just detached in the first place. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, sounds good. We kind of touched on Osira. I would love to discuss her her interesting little, armistice that she presents to the Federation. And obviously, the Admiral is fairly impressed with it after he reads it. Do you guys feel this is authentic?
Yes, absolutely. I do. I don't speak for Ken.
I would not have believed it, except Eli, which is a very obvious anagram for lie, said that it's true. And that really surprised me. And I spent the next 10 minutes wondering how she was bypassing his lie detector, because this didn't seem authentic. And yet, before she beamed over from Discovery, she said to her crew, like, this is the biggest gamble of my career, and she actually looked nervous, which was not an emotion I'd ever seen on her.
Right.
And so there does seem to be some support for the idea that she is sincere.
I felt that it was looking sincere until Admiral asked her who would be the head of this, to which she, of course, kind of points out she would use Aurelio. And he said, but would he be a puppet of yours? And she says, no, of course not. And that's when Eli says, that's not true. And she said, and this is what got me, she said, let me say that again. And that to me was kind of a trigger in my head of, so has she been lying the whole time and has figured out how to say it so that Eli believes her? But I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, because it seems like a heck of a lot of work to put together all of this information to somehow betray the Federation in the end.
I think it was totally legit in that point until the moment where Vance is like, hey, you got to answer for your crimes. And then she's like, oh, no, I'm not accepting any responsibility.
Right.
That was not part of the plan. And no, that's when she fell apart. And that part where he's like, Eli's like, she's lying. She's like, no, say it again. And then she stands in front of him trying to make it so he can't see her.
Yeah.
Whether that would work or not. I mean, like, because she saw at that moment, like, things were falling apart. Like, oh no. But I still think she was authentic.
I think this ties into the original name of the episode, For the Good of the People. Vance said, your people are good. Please be as good as them. And ultimately, Osira is in this for herself. You know, she knows what Rin told us, which is that they are running low on dilithium. And this is for the salvation of the Emerald Chain. But even that salvation is ultimately to her benefit. She wants to rule an empire. Her empire is collapsing. So she needs to save the empire in order to save herself. And so when Vance says, you can do one, but not both, she's like, that's a deal breaker. What's the point of saving an empire if I can't be the emperor?
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I believe that everything she put in that armistice, everything she said was true, but I don't think we really got at her motives in that dialogue.
I liked this scene as well because it actually made the Emerald Chain seem like a political entity and not just some villain bad guy of the week.
Mm-hmm.
They actually feel like, oh, okay, this actual group of people in this world now, not like the Klingons or the Romulans. Now it's like, okay, yeah, this is actual political power. And that scene, oh man, the whole thing was so well done. I loved their little chess game of negotiations here. Vance, when she's eating the apple, like, I mean, she's trying to say, like, you know, we got things like this and I can eat real food. And as she's eating the apple, and he's like, it's made of our shite, you know. And she starts pulling it up. But he's saying like, I've never had a real apple, but basically I'd rather have this than what you've got going on. Like, I would rather have this replicated fake stuff, but you know, but this is our sacrifice to hold up our ideals,
right?
Then we have to plunder planets.
Neil, let me ask you this. Have you been either skeptical or suspicious of Vance or the Federation up until this episode?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely, when Discovery first arrives and meets with them, there's just this, I feel like there's always this hesitation with knowing what Vance and the Federation is really doing. And I feel like it's, it's obviously struggled since the burn, but it almost feels like, I don't know, it's significantly weaker than it could ever think that it could be. And because it's constantly under this state of, you know, trying to do good, but also suffering, it just feels lost. And I don't know that, you know, Vance's goals are to spread, you know, the feeling of Federation and this group of planets, where it really just feels like they're trying to survive. So I don't know. It just feels like this constant struggle of, we're trying to be good, but at the same time, we really can't be as good as we want to be. And so I just don't have this great feeling that they're actually holding up to the ideals of the Federation as they could be. But I get that it's a struggle. So
for much of our discussions here, we were like, guys, I've definitely been like, I don't know what's going on here at the Federation. Something still feels off.
Yeah.
Until this episode for me. to be honest. Vance here, to me, she's like, okay, he's still upholding the views of the Federation. I think now I think he's on the up and up. Until now, I think it was intentionally left a little vague, but now we see him actually upholding this. To me, I think, but yeah, the whole season I was like, something's going on. Something's still off, but not anymore. But that's me. I think he's on the up and up now, and he still holds Federation values that we know.
Yeah, I think this episode definitely showed him in a much, I don't know, nicer light with regard to the Federation. I am curious, as Osira mentioned, why am I not meeting with the president? So I was a little curious. I don't remember that even being mentioned before this episode.
Oh, see, I know the answer. Like, we spent all our budget on making the nacelles be able to pull off Discovery.
Exactly.
Well, I wondered if both Vance and Osira are merely representatives, because not only is there not a president we can't see, but also Osira mentioned that she introduced herself as minister. And that can be a top billing title like prime minister, but it might also mean something like emissary or ambassador, where she's a representative. So do you think that there is somebody else above her in the Emerald Chain?
She implied that. She implied that there's like people who are actually in charge of decisions of the government. I think so. She's like no longer. She's not the ultimate authority that we assume. I always assumed like she was just the evil overlord up until this point. But it sounds like there actually is a government, and but they don't have any political will or desire to stop her.
And do you think that there actually is a president? Because that could also be something that Vance is lying about in order to, suggest that there is somebody more powerful. Like, don't screw with me or else I'll get Dad and he'll get mad at you.
Well, the fact that it's possible there isn't, or it's an AI or something like that.
Like Control?
I don't know. But, God, I can't even imagine that if they go 1,000 years in the future and this, but I don't know. They intentionally left it vague for a reason.
Yeah.
Either that reason is it matters to this plot, or so they can use it in the future, possibly use it in the future. And I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer in this one.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking of this fantasy novel I read, which was actually written by the guy who wrote the DS9 episode Far Beyond the Stars.
Nice.
Where the president is dead, but they don't want to worry the general population, but they also still want to be in control. So they just keep saying, oh, the president is indisposed, the president is not here, etc. When, and we're making the shots, we're calling the shots in the meantime, but it's with his full authority and approval. And the fact is, no, he's dead. So maybe Vance is like, yeah, our president kind of signed off a couple years ago, but we don't need to let you know that because that would be a sign of weakness.
Right.
It kind of happens in Gideon the Ninth too. Harrow.
Oh, that's right. I read that part.
Yeah, her parents died years ago, but she still puppets them because no one else knows, or they're pretending.
She's a necromancer.
Yeah. Or they're all just like, sure, whatever, okay.
I guess in that sense, you could also say it's a Weekend at Bernie's.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, Discovery is totally going Weekend at Bernie's. They're going to bring out the president and start moving his jaw. Hello!
It's Jaresh Inyo still.
Awesome.
We had, this episode, we had Die Hard in Space, which I really liked.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Michael Burnham going through the bowels of the ship, and we even had the "Give me the detonators" line, more or less. And she's out there. Like, we had Die Hard.
Yeah.
You said bowels.
Yeah, the bowels of the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I saw your tweet before I saw this episode where you said that they were going Die Hard, so when I saw her get into the Jeffries tube / air duct, I was like, oh, that's what Sabriel meant. And then she lost her shoes.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And I'm like, come on.
But it wasn't a total, like, it was just enough where it's like, this is still our own. But yeah. She's running around hopping with her injured leg, but it was a foot in the broken glass and Die Hard and all that stuff. And but yeah, they were having fun with that.
Very good homage.
Well, it's sort of what was that?
It was a very good homage. Yes.
Yes. And it also reminded me of one of my most fun TNG episodes, Starship Mine, which was Picard versus Tim Russ.
Yeah, Picard versus Tuvok.
Yeah, it's just him on the ship pretending to be Mott the Barber going back to get his saddle. And all of a sudden, it's awesome. So yeah, I thought that was fun. Although I feel like I missed something. What was the nature of the phaser that Burnham was using? Did it morph from a bracelet into a phaser?
That's the part of the new tech that they have. We've seen it before, where like even when they went down to the Giorgio and her went to the planet, they could hide away the weapons into some pocket dimension in their gear.
Oh, so that's not something she stole off the regulator she knocked out?
I mean, she may have stole the gun, but that tech, no, it's new for this season because it's the future. We've seen it before, but it was kind of, I mean, it wasn't obvious, but yeah, we saw Giorgio hide a gun on her person when they went down to the planet.
Oh, yeah. When you say the planet, do you mean the slave planet?
Guardian planet?
Guardian planet. Yeah. Because I didn't notice seeing it before, and our friend Kay, who was on the show recently, I was watching this episode with them, and they said, how is Burnham able to summon a phaser out of midair? And I was like, I don't know either. So that's I don't doubt you that they have shown this before, but it was, as you said, very subtle, and both Kay and I missed it until this episode where it was very obvious.
Yeah.
Although, geez, Michael, the very first guard you take out stabs you in the leg. I mean, you could have like taken out 3 or 4 and then gotten hurt.
Well, it's the first one as far as we saw. She could have taken out some other ones before that. We just didn't get to see that.
They just weren't as cool, so we didn't get to see it.
I think Burnham is exactly as much of a badass as they show us her to be.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, for sure. I wouldn't want to be on her bad side.
No. I mean, are there characters on Discovery whose bad side you would want to be on?
I mean,
no one, period.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I don't want to be on anyone's bad side because I try to be friendly with everyone. But I guess, I think the point of the statement is to say you're afraid to be on that person's bad side. Whereas,
right.
You know, would I be afraid to be on Tilly's bad side? Probably not. She's fantastic. I love her. But, you know, I don't think she's going to like kill me if she were mad at me. Whereas Michael Burnham might.
I think in the Prime universe, I could survive being on Reese's bad side. In the Mirror universe, we saw him going toe to toe with.
Always Queen.
Yeah, but in the Prime universe, he seems pretty gentle. So I was like, maybe you're gonna spit in my food, but that's pretty much the worst of it. But yeah, Neil, you mentioned Tilly. What do you think of her performance as acting captain? I
think she is doing as well as anyone could in the situation she was in. I don't think she's done anything incorrectly. So being overpowered by Osira, I don't think was necessarily a statement of her inability. They were obviously trying to do about 50 things at once while that situation was going down. So the fact that in this episode, once they're held captive and she's still sort of basically running that group of bridge crew, I was kind of impressed that was still kind of in motion and everyone was respecting that chain of command. Cause you could see there was the opportunity for other people to kind of step in and do things, but especially once they had taken out the guards, I mean, Tilly's just pointing and telling people what to do and everyone's like, yep, let's go do that. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed that whether or not she's making the right decisions, she's doing it decisively. And I think that's important in a situation like this.
Absolutely.
And even Book said, it's not that I don't trust you, it's that you are our best hope. And that's why I'm staying behind, is to cover your retreat.
Right.
Yeah. It's like they're already behind her. They're behind her 100%.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, that was an important vote of confidence, I thought.
Rin dying. Oh, we got to see the transwarp conduit and why it was somewhat dangerous. There's this ship graveyard, apparently.
Yeah, we've never seen that before, and that's weird. It's just like there's all this jetsam and flotsam just floating around in a transwarp conduit. Like,
is this
the same?
I thought we
of starships.
I thought we had seen that before.
Had we?
I thought when Michael had Book take her off the planet in like episode 2 of this season, because I thought that's like the merchant subspace tunnel or something, but maybe it wasn't in the episode. Maybe he had talked about it and that it was completely overrun with basically wrecked ships at this point. I'm not sure. I kind of like when he was in it, I was like, oh, this is that thing that was talked about before. Like it wasn't a surprise to me, so it had to be mentioned somewhere. Maybe I'm crazy though.
Well, they're not mutually exclusive.
Very true.
Remind me, is this the same method of transit that Voyager used in the series finale?
Well, the same name. We don't know if it's actually the same because they've used like transwarp in like the movies too. But that's. I mean, if we're gonna go with that, hypothetically, yes.
Okay.
But we just don't know enough. But maybe.
I just thought it was interesting that these ships that are now broken and non-functional would reside in this subspace as opposed to being nudged
Knocked
out of it.
out.
Like we've fallen out of warp.
No, these are the conduits that the Vulcans helped make. I think they're trying to imply. And that's why they're so dangerous or something like that. And maybe these are lost ships or these are... I don't...
I thought those conduits required like some sort of a Stargate.
I mean, I guess we didn't see them go into or out, did we?
Well,
Here?
we know there wasn't one outside the Viridian Nebula. I don't think the Vulcans would have built one there.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
Could it be that
Yeah.
these are the Borg transwarp conduits, and those are all remnants of the future Borg having exploded during the burn?
I mean, they did mention... Oh, I didn't think about the Borg there. But they mentioned that... they mentioned like a whatever class ship. Like they knew like of a Federation ship that was in there, or type.
I don't know. I think this might be just another one of those plot conveniences.
Yeah.
Well, if they're, I was going to say,
space plot convenience.
I was just going to say, Ken, you mentioned maybe they would fall out of warp, but isn't that the point of the transwarp conduit? Is that you can't, right? Because you're in the conduit, so there is no like the ship can't just fall out of warp. It's in the conduit because the conduit itself is creating the warp field.
Kind of like with the Deep Space Nine wormhole, you can't go out anywhere other than the 2 points that it connects.
Right.
Right.
Kind of like
maybe.
Chutes and Ladders.
I mean, snakes and ladders.
Yeah, snakes and ladders. Once you're on the snake, you have to slide all the way down.
That's right. Because you can't fall off a snake. It's impossible.
Right.
We know this.
Scientists have studied this.
Switching tacks for a moment, what do you think about them bringing back the Old West bad guy from episode 2?
Oh, I told you he was going to come back. Apparently he was in Deadwood. I only know him from Vikings TV show.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But I wouldn't have known that unless I wouldn't have seen someone talk about it. But no, he's back. He was like, we need a bad guy on the ship while Osira's gone. And he played that role. It's
going to sound terrible. He was a much more believable character in the previous episode he was in.
Yeah.
I feel like his demeanor and his conversations in this episode were kind of, I don't know, unimpassionate. I don't know how to say that. Like
he was the comic villain.
Yeah, I was kind of like, oh yeah, I'll go get my dudes and we'll figure out who it is. It's like, oh, okay, you go get that done, you guy.
Oh! He was important though for helping us show that Osira was being truthful in her attempts, because he kept saying like, we're told to keep them alive. We got to keep them alive. We got to keep them alive.
Well, that's true.
He was that conveyance of that message, even if his character was kind of a cartoony villain.
It also showed that Osira does have authority, because he's really, in my mind, the only other sort of leading bad guy we've seen. And he is just absolutely following whatever she says. Like, there's no question. So I thought that was maybe a statement to her authority.
I think one reason we may have seen such a change in his demeanor is because on 2 fronts, it's a very different context. The previous time we saw him, he was the bad guy. He had underlings under him, and now he has an authority that he reports to. Mm-hmm. And secondly, previously he was intimidating a bunch of small people on a backward planet, and now he's dealing with an entire starship of people. So I think he is operating on a much different scale and in a much different hierarchy than he's accustomed to, and he is out of his element. He is looking for a job, and he's looking for payback, but the only people who could give him either of those things are circumstances that he is just not comfortable with.
I can see that. All right, I need you to go into this role. Like, you are in over your head. He's like, all right, I can do that. All right.
Sounded
Yes,
just
exactly
him.
like that.
Thanks.
Perfect.
That was uncanny. And also, you know what? Another good point about him being brought back is the last time that he threatened Starfleet officers, it was Georgiou, Saru, and Tilly. And Georgiou and Saru told Tilly, when the shooting starts, you hide behind the bar. And
That's
she
true.
didn't do anything. And now, Georgiou is gone, Saru is gone, Tilly is the only one left. There's no bar for her to hide behind. And she is standing the hell up to this guy.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's hell yeah. That's a great point.
So it's the same context for her, the same villain, but a very different reaction, and it's an opportunity for us to see her character evolution.
Yeah.
So I do find it a little unbelievable that he saved himself. I'm guessing maybe he had an emergency vehicle stashed on each planet that he was threatening so that he would never be stranded, because I don't think he had anybody looking out for him to come save him.
I mean, it is TV, like a pulp TV villain. You don't see him die. I think we even talked about it in that episode. You don't see him die. They're coming back.
Right.
Right. If there's no body, and sometimes even then, like we saw with Culber,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
anything is possible.
Yeah, Star Trek death is only a setback.
That's true. You can always clone them or get their mirror universe counterpart or anything, make a holodeck recreation or whatever.
Mhm.
Anything else going on in this episode we want to chat about?
I mean, Aurelio, it's kind of interesting. Like, he's in the future that we know of Star Trek and the original TNG thing, like, they have cures for everything. But here in this 1,000 years and things are a little different. Like he said, like, I should have been dead. I thought that was interesting. Like, or basically not kept alive. I thought that was an interesting take on culture then.
Right. Well, I think he alludes to that, right? That in the time you came from when science was free, maybe I would have been fine, but because of where I am, I'm lucky to have had Osira fix me.
Well, without spoilers, we saw in Picard where, due to a lack of access to resources, a character died, and that could have been prevented.
Right.
Yeah.
What did you think of the sphere data showing up as the helper robots?
Oh, the dots.
I loved that there was a slight foreshadowing of it when they said that they couldn't delete this old movie clip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I knew something was going to happen. But also, more important, this vindicates me because I asked episodes ago in Transporter Lock, why are the dots in the opening sequence? They must be important.
Right.
And they are.
They are.
Yeah.
Yes.
So But
you told all of us, Ken.
all three of you listeners, Steve, yeah, that's you. I'm talking to you. The sphere data we saw at the end of season 2 will not allow the ship to be destroyed. And I feel like it could have exerted more authority in this season to ensure that it didn't get captured in the first place.
Maybe it doesn't want to make itself too obvious.
It's possible, but also for all that sphere data to fit into a little dot. Now, we don't know the storage capacities of these machines, so I'm making some assumptions. But given that they are so much physically smaller than the ship, I assume they also have a smaller computer, smaller hard drive, smaller memory. All that sphere data compressed into just a few dots is impressive to me.
Did they say that it's totally completely hidden there, or just imply that it's controlling these dots?
Yeah.
I may have missed it. I just don't remember.
No, you're right. The sphere data could still be in the main computer, but when Burnham said you hid yourself in the dots, I took that to mean that it moved itself.
Okay, yeah, that's very.
I mean,
I just couldn't remember the wording.
I guess I look at it this way: the sphere data got into Discovery 900 and whatever years ago, right? 930 years ago. At that time, it took up a lot of computer space. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be some significant advances in computer storage in a millennia. So that's why I thought it was interesting that they even said, oh, it's just this little bit of code, because to the storage capacity of the computer now, it's probably just a little bit of code. And so therefore, to say that these dots wouldn't be able to hold it, I think that there could be a full copy of the sphere data in every single one of those dots.
20 bajillion gigaquads, how quaint.
Well, there's this comic strip called PC Weenies, and one of my favorite strips from 2008, it shows a guy in 1984 saying, "Rad, a 3.5-inch disk drive. Goodbye, 5 1/4-inch floppies. Future, here I come." And then it shows the same guy in 1989. cool, a 40 megabyte hard drive. It'll take me years to use all that space. And then in 2008, dude, a 4 terabyte RAID drive. I'll never fill this up. And now it shows him at the service desk of a computer store in the year 2052. And the clerk is saying, 100 zettabytes? Are you running a vintage machine?
Exactly. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of storage. I thought it was interesting that so I did not mention this earlier about me, but I work sort of in the movie streaming business. So to see that the Sphere data appeared to have been encoded into video files, I thought was pretty fantastic. That's how I read into that myself.
Oh, you know what? That's a really good point. I took it very literally when they said that they couldn't delete that Charlie Chaplin movie. The movie itself might have been the Sphere data.
Yes, that's how I kind of was like, oh, that's the Sphere. Like, I took it right away. Like, oh, that's the Sphere data probably coded into video frames.
That makes a lot of sense. That's a very clever interpretation. Well done, Captain of Engineering.
It's not my first rodeo of starships.
Well, I guess you can stay on this one for the meantime.
Thanks.
Anytime. We're not going to jettison you out the airlock. Wow, cool. So this means that in the last episode of the season, assuming they want to tie everything up, they need to get Discovery back, figure out some sort of an agreement with the Emerald Chain, go back to the dilithium plant and save Saru, Culber, and Adira, find out why the distress signal was a song that everybody knew, figure out how Su'Kal was able to create the burn so that they can prevent it from happening again. There's a lot here.
As well as figure out how to mine dilithium from a planet made of dilithium. Because I'm sure that they're going to want that.
Is this going to have something to do with the short trek where Tilly met the girl from the planet who helped refine dilithium?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if that comes into play. I know it made her very significant in the end of season 2, but we haven't heard any mention of that planet or that race or their technology in season 3.
Yeah, good point. It's loose ends, or potential loose ends. I strongly suggest if you have access to Ready Room to listen to this one because they had Jonathan Frakes on. And I love listening to directors now talk about their work and how they got this. And him talking about the scene with Sonequa and Anthony Rapp, getting them to do that scene. It was just amazing work, and basically told them, like, go all out. I can pull you back if you overdo it, but it's harder to me to push you harder and harder. And so they were just acting their hearts out for that, and it just sounded freaking incredible. Would have loved to be on the seat on the set of that.
I mean, the actors who play Stamets and Michael aren't even friends anymore.
Yeah, right? It was so
I need you to really hate each other. We're like, can do.
So I strongly suggest if you can watch this week's Ready Room, this is like one of the ones to watch.
Oh, cool.
Is that something you have access to, Neil?
I'll have to see if I can find it. It's not readily available.
I see what you did there.
And finally, like this week, I had the 2 instances of like Star Trek people, like I see in my other media. And both names we mentioned today. I thought were interesting. Tim Russ. I've been playing a lot of Warcraft Shadowlands, and he is one of the quest givers. I was like doing something, and all of a sudden his voice comes on. Like, I know that voice.
Oh, cool.
And also, I've been rewatching the TV show Psych, and we're almost at the end. And one of the later episodes, they do Psych the musical. And who is one of our main antagonists or antagonists this episode? It's Anthony Rapp. I totally forgot he was in there. And it was a musical episode, so he got to do his singing too. It was great. And I tweeted that out, and he liked my tweet, so I was all happy.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, speaking of actors we know from other places, we've talked about David Cronenberg, who plays the glasses guy in this season, who is fascinated with the Mirror Universe. What do you think are the odds that he is the president of the Federation?
Oh. Maybe actually, that's a good question.
Like, we don't know his role, and it could just be creepy guy fascinated with the Mirror Universe, and that's fine. Right. I'm not saying he needs to be something else, but I mean, I feel like we also haven't seen the end of him, even though there is no more Mirror Universe characters in this season.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. Like, what is his role? We don't know what he does.
And one more question. We're really hopping around now, but if Osira is sincere in her desire for an armistice, why did she show up in a stolen Federation vessel? She said she needed leverage, but at the same time, it sort of undermines her intentions here.
Right. She could have just showed up and no weapons on. Like, I'm here to talk. Let's have a conversation. Like, she could have done it without any of that mess.
Right. You don't start a peace negotiation with an act of war.
Right.
I mean, I think they even kind of touched on that a little bit. Like, what is your play here? And I still don't have an answer. I don't have a good answer, though, still, to be honest.
I mean, is her tactic to say, if you don't agree to peace with us, we're going to steal your most precious technology? Because that's not a great negotiation gambit.
It's less negotiation and trying to force their hand.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's not negotiation, that's extortion.
Yeah, it's an odd play, any way you look at it. That, again, unless it's just that selfish mindset of, like, I have to have this backup plan if my gamble fails.
Right.
Maybe that's all she knows.
Yeah.
And if it's just a stalling tactic while her scientist deciphers the spore drive, then don't go to Federation headquarters in the first place.
Yeah, there was no reason to go there except to go talk to them. So,
right. I don't know. However, I do enjoy that. I think we saw more of Osira and of Vance, either of them, in this episode than we have in the rest of the season combined. And it was a really great opportunity to see these characters in a new environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Osira before this episode seemed, in storyline, godlike. Like, she was just this, evil master from elsewhere land. And now she's become this real character. Like you mentioned, Sabriel, she's in power of some kind. There's a political body behind the Emerald Chain that I feel like I wasn't really absorbing up until this episode.
There's a great Star Trek Voyager short story published in one of the Strange New Worlds anthologies where Tom Paris used to love going into the holodeck to play his Captain Proton holo stories. And in the short story, Harry Kim had hacked it to give the villain a backstory. So, like, as the villain is torturing Tom Paris, he says, "Oh, the reason I'm evil is because my father never loved me as I was a child." And Tom says, like, "Computer, stop programming." He says to Harry, like, "You've ruined it. The reason I love this game is because it's literally and conceptually black and white. I get to be the good guy against the bad guy. And if you make the bad guy empathetic, then I can no longer pull the trigger on him conscience free.
Right.
Mhm.
Because now I can understand why he is that way." And yet, I think, like, and for the purpose Tom Paris was looking for, I can understand that. But I think the sort of narrative that we Trekkies enjoy nowadays is a little bit more nuanced than what Tom Paris looks for in a holodeck. And I think having a villain like Osira, who was, as you said, Neil, somewhat one-dimensional prior to this, now we see her wanting something that isn't evil.
Mm-hmm.
We see her being nervous about it. We see her making compromises. It's fine and dandy to just have your nephew eaten by a transworm. But to actually sit down at a table and say, this is what I'm willing to give and this is what I'm not, and I hope that you agree with me, that really does redefine the character.
Right.
So, as Stamets said, she is more than what she appears to be, but she's also exactly what she appears to be.
Right.
Anyway, that's my last monologue of this episode of Transporter Lock.
You promise?
Anything else going on?
Not for me. I think that's a good cover because this episode ends before the story is resolved, so it's still like what's gonna happen next, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
And what happens next is not the episode Outside, which is the original name. It's That Hope Is You Part 2.
Yeah.
Finally.
So I mentioned, like, we were like, what's going on with these episode titles all season? Like, these are so weird names. And then these last few, they're changing the names on us. And in Ready Room, it was clearly recorded somewhat before Thanksgiving by what they're talking about in there. but Will Wheaton calls it by the quote unquote correct name. And so they've had these. They either gave a list of old names like months ago and never bothered correcting them, or they've had a change in mind for at least a month and a half, 2 months, and just never bothered.
You're saying Ready Room was recorded before Thanksgiving?
Yeah, the way he and Jonathan Frakes were talking.
Gotcha.
It was recorded before Thanksgiving because Jonathan Frakes said something about, we're going up to Vancouver for season 4 after Thanksgiving.
Okay, so Thanksgiving 2020, because Discovery season 3, as far as we understand it, was recorded in its entirety before the pandemic struck.
Yeah.
So the Ready Rooms are recorded well after, closer to publication date.
Yeah. But sometime, I guess we don't really know when, but sometime between summer and Thanksgiving.
Of 2020. Got it.
Interesting.
Okay. It would be funny if That Hope Is You Part 2 picks right up where the first one ended and we get to see what Michael did for that year.
Maybe
then we're like, well, what about Federation headquarters? What about Osira?
Nope.
And they're like, oh, that's all a year from now. We'll get to it next season. Yeah, this is the penultimate episode, just one to go.
Yeah, wow. It's certainly possible they could just leave us hanging until next season, but I'm sure we would all be very sad by that.
Yes, I mean, both of those things are true. They could do that and we would be sad. But, we really haven't had a lot of cliffhangers per se. Like the end of season 1 cliffhanged with, oh, look, it's the Enterprise. But everything else that had happened that season was tidied up. So this was more of a teaser than a cliffhanger. Mm-hmm. And same with season 2. Like everything that was happening, like they had to destroy Control and get the sphere data to the future. Mission accomplished. It's not like when All Good Things ended and like we have to fight the Borg and defeat them and rescue Picard. And neither of those things happened. And we have to wait to find out what happens. Right. So I'm hoping that everything in this season gets tied up with maybe some teasers for the next season. But it's a lot to expect from just one more episode.
Yeah.
Well, Neil Beardsley, Captain of Engineering, it's been a pleasure having you on the Transporter Lock podcast.
It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you for inviting me and having this fantastic discussion about Discovery.
Where can our listeners find you online?
I would say that the best place would be at my travel site, which is bluebagredbag.com. As mentioned at the beginning, I'm also commonly known online as N.A. Beards. So you can find me with that name on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc.
Awesome. Yeah. Sabriel, any parting shots for our friend?
Just now, thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And you didn't think that you would know enough Star Trek. Well, until next time.
Hit it.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review on iTunes and keep your hailing frequencies open by following us on Twitter @TransporterLock or subscribing to our podcast and email newsletter at transporterlock.com.
Well, as usual, I'm impressed with that. So I look forward to seeing your editing. Long-standing old joke, Sabriel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm not even going to bother trying to explain it.
No, it's not worth it.
No, it's cool.
Maybe we can work some into the episode too, so that the rest of the audience can be like, what the? It'll be great.
Yeah.
Right, why am I listening to this? That's what I ask myself every day.
Oh.
Okay.
Now I have tears in my eyes. Darn it, Ken.
Tears of joy.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, my gosh. Why do they call them chip clips anyway?
Stop it. We're never going to get through this if you go down that road.
It's too late, man. It's too late.